Well, welcome. Welcome again. And again, congratulations. I want to stress that for me, I feel grateful. I feel really grateful that I have the opportunity to contribute to you. And while there's a sense in which all we're doing is turning your practice into a business, the truth of it is, at an even deeper level, what we're doing is we're assisting you in integrating your life purpose or your spirituality and your prosperity, your purpose and your prosperity. And I just want to express how grateful I am to be a part of that process for you. Now, with that, let's dive right in. The beginning of this recording is really going to be about explaining to you the structure of the course, and it is going to be in several modules. So let's just talk about the way the course is going to go for you, and of course the introduction and the foundation. We're also going to talk in this first segment about what it actually takes, what it takes to build and maintain your six-figure practice, whether that's a coaching practice or a holistic practice, or whether that's just some service that you're providing that requires self-marketing, which is one of the ways I like to think about our unique skill sets. Is that part of it is that it requires self-marketing. We don't get to just go in and punch a time clock and have somebody pay us. We really can't go on autopilot for very long and still do well. So this is really about that aliveness. Now, when I say six figures, by the way, I mean somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000 annually. It means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And because, as you probably already know, I'm really stringent about making sure that I'm only teaching something that I have done, that I've already accomplished. So, I've had a lot of people ask, well, what about a seven-figure practice? I said, well, I'm sure that's entirely possible. I haven't done that yet, though, so I don't feel like I can actually teach that with any sense of integrity or ethics. So first, I just want to unpack what it actually takes for you to build a six-figure business and maintain it. A lot of people, they just aren't clear about how actually simple it is. Now, it may not be easy. There's certainly a lot of moving parts. But I like to demystify the numbers so that we can deconstruct some of the overwhelm that a lot of people feel. They think they have to do it all at once, or they just have this fantasy in their head that they're aware of or they're not aware of about what it actually takes to build and maintain a six-figure coaching practice. So let's demystify that. And there's just a few things that you must do. The first one isn't really one of the three components to maintaining a six-figure practice or building a six-figure practice. It's just sort of something that I assert should be in the background all the time. It's sort of the canvas that you paint on. It's the ground from which you come from. It's the rock that you stand on. And frankly, it just is what has people trust you and has you be able to be successful. And we're going to get into some of the pitfalls of this. But first of all, you just need to be a living example of the work that you do. The simple example, the easy example is, the overweight person who's selling some sort of weight loss program. Or the smoker, who sees, clients, hypnosis clients perhaps for smoking cessation, but he continues to smoke himself. Now, I think the argument that they can still affect change with people, well, of course they can. I also just don't think that the lack of apply to self is really, we're just not going to get away with it much longer. People just aren't going to be able to get away with it. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that we simply have to walk our talk. I relish that. And it's just not, in the integral age, nobody's getting away with that anymore. So, what it actually takes is, first of all, being a living example of the work that you do. Next is you have to have a comprehensive offering or a series of sessions. The next component is to have a sales system, and then formalized referral systems and And by the way, to use the sales system as well. And then the third component is to provide free, accessible value for people. And there's a few reasons for that that we'll get into quite thoroughly. But for the most part, it's just something you got to do these days in this marketplace. And of course, I'll go into explaining precisely why. Now, you might think I'm crazy that's it. And that is actually it. That is all it takes. And while it's simple, it is not necessarily easy. And this course is intended to make it far, far easier for you. There's one more thing that I want to make sure that we cover. And this one thing is not critical, but it will be very helpful to you. I'll explain how and why it's helpful to you when we get there. But for now, rather than hold you in suspense, the one thing to distinguish or declare is your purpose. It could be your life purpose, it could be your spiritual purpose, it could be the deeper meaning in the work for you. But it really is the why of what you're doing, It's the thing that you hold on to. It's the purpose. It's the reason you wake up. And frankly, there will be times when that's going to be your life raft, and there are going to be times when that's going to be your source of inspiration. Now, the reason I don't actually get into distinguishing your purpose rapidly is because we want to make sure that we clear out some of the chatter first, clean out your foundation first. I've seen people declare some global purpose and it immediately crashes them because they haven't cleared out their anger, fear, guilt, shame, sadness, their limiting beliefs about themselves, whatever those may be, whatever those things are that are still lurking for them and lurking for you. The personal work. If we, dived right into purpose, well, then that would be confusing for some, overwhelming for others. For some, it would be great. But for the most part, I need to make sure that we are gently expanding you. But the idea of the why, for what purpose? The thing that you want to do, the practice that you want to build, what's the ultimate end? What does it ultimately serve? Another way to think about it is, what is your ultimate concern? Or what is the largest process that you're contributing to? But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about what it takes to actually build and maintain a six-figure practice in terms of real-world numbers, in actual, tangible numbers. All you actually need to do is sign 2.5 clients per month to a comprehensive extended offering, which, as you know, will help you build in this course. And within 6 months, you will be well on your way to a six-figure income. Now, when I say well on your way, I don't mean to be vague there. It's actually, you'll be at that run rate in terms of business language. So if we take a snapshot of you in 6 months, then you should be well on your way. In other words, if you project that snapshot out over the course of the remainder of the year, then you will make six figures. Run rate something, go ahead, feel free to look it up yourself. As long as I'm thinking about it, while there are other books I'll recommend, as long as we're talking about it, I think The Portable MBA is a wonderful book to pick up. But there will be specific recommended reading at the end of this particular module. So this program is going to walk you through step by step everything you need to do and how to do it. And it's going to be my pleasure to be your guide on this path, to assist you in integrating your purpose and your prosperity. And so it begins. So this is just sort of my welcome to you. Thank you. We are going to dive right in. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what you need to do to make this course work for you. And the first thing we need to do is let's have you set some outcomes for the course. And let's have you set some tangible intentions, some goals, however you want to think about it. I like the word outcomes, but everybody has their own preferences. So go ahead and pause the video now, and go ahead and get a pen and paper, open a Word doc, or a Google Doc, or Pages if you're on the Macintosh and you're not platform agnostic, and make sure that you're ready as we go through this next exercise. So go ahead and pause the video now, get a pen and paper, or open up an electronic document so that you can begin to write some stuff down and begin the recording again once you have that in place. Great. So let's talk about your outcomes for the course. What do you want? There's a few ways to think about that too. What do you want to achieve through this course? It's stated differently, standing 4 or 5 months from now, in the future, looking back on today, what have you already achieved by that date, 4, 5, 6 months from now? Now, there's a few pieces of criteria, well-formedness conditions. Criteria that will assist you in having the outcome be more probable that it'll actually realize itself. First, you need to have it stated in positive language. Second is it must be measurable. The third is it must be achievable. Realistic, but we're going to talk about that for a second because a lot of people get confused about that. It needs to be responsible, of course. And then the last piece of criteria is it needs to be set in time. So let's talk about these. They're pretty important. Hopefully you're already aware of these if you're a practitioner. Some of you may have heard of SMART outcomes. Some of you may have heard it a different way. But let's just go through each of them for your sake, for the sake of your outcomes. First, it needs to be stated in the positive language. I'm sure most of you know that you can't achieve a negative. So a lot of people say, well, I want to stop blanking. Well, that's great, but what would you be doing instead? And, the other thing, the challenge is the focus, the reticular activator system. The secret is, has been all the rage the last few years, but there's really just biological hardwiring there. We have to sort for what it is that we're looking for. It's part of what's been left over from, millions of years of evolution. So we task our brain, some part of us does, with finding that thing out there in the wild. It's just like when you decide you want a new car, or you really like a new car, and suddenly you start seeing that car everywhere. Well, you didn't just manifest it out of thin air like some silly people in the San Francisco Bay Area might think. It's just that it's one of those things that now your brain has been tasked with noticing when it shows up. So we want to make sure that your outcomes are stated in positive language. Not what you don't want to do or what you want to stop or anything like that, but what you want to have, do, be, have accomplished, perhaps resolved. But even in the face of that, if you're resolving, say, something like fear, well, what would you be feeling instead once the fear's gone? Would it be ease? What would it be? Like that. Measurable is great. We'll get into evidence really thoroughly because I'm going to assist you, obviously, in writing out your outcomes. But it's, what would you be seeing, feeling, hearing, doing, or experiencing? That's how I like to think about evidence and measurability. Seeing, feeling, hearing, doing, experiencing. It could be tasting, obviously, and touching, but achievable or realistic. This one's tough because most people don't give themselves enough credit. They set their outcomes a little bit too low. One of the things I do in my own private practice is I ask my one-on-one clients what outcome would have it be worth twice the money? So in other words, what would you feel would be worth at least double what you've just agreed to pay me? And then I actually get some pretty good outcomes that I think is are actually pretty realistic. Now let me give you a silly example. Maybe you want to play Wimbledon this year. You tell me you want to win Wimbledon this year, and I say, oh, okay, great. And you're 60 and you've never played tennis. That's just not living in possibility. That's being a little bit that's just being silly. Not that nobody at 60 couldn't win Wimbledon, although nobody over 30 has yet to date. It's one of those spooky things in the sports world. I'm sure somebody will someday. But if you've never played tennis, it's just not realistic for yourself. At the same time, we want you to stretch a bit. So whatever you think is achievable realistically, go for a little bit more. Responsible, for me, the R really means that the thing that you want or to achieve or resolve, once you have that, we want to make sure it does good for you, does good for your system, good for your community, good for the world. One of the really stark examples I like to use is, let's say somebody says, I want to dump some toxic waste in the ocean. Okay, great. Well, that's, stated in the positive. It's a thing he or she is doing, not doing. It's measurable. We could measure in a certain amount of, metric tons of the stuff. It's certainly achievable or realistic depending on, whether or not you have a delivery system, a tanker, but, those things could be acquired. But it's certainly not responsible. Not for anybody, really. And then the last one, of course, is set in time. And when I say set in time, I actually mean a specific day, a specific time, a specific year. And when we get into working with your unconscious organization of time, in the personal work, you'll understand to a greater degree why that's so important. And I've highlighted these for you so you can see the SMART, so you can easily remember it. Stated in the positive, measurable, achievable, responsible, and set in time, a specific date. So here's an example of a SMART outcome, a well-formed outcome. By January 15, 2012, I will have a growing practice with at least 10 clients. Something like that. So a specific number of clients, a very specific date. You could even say by midnight, January 15th, 2011. Or is it 11:59 on the p.m. on the 15th? Or is it 12:01 on the 16th? These things, believe it or not, can actually matter for your unconscious mind. Whatever number you think is realistic, but go ahead and set your own. I mean, whatever time you're reviewing this course in, 4 or 5 months from now, what do you think is realistic now? And then add a bit to that. Add 10, 20% to that. So go ahead and pause the video now and create at least 3 outcomes, just the stuff that you want. Don't worry about the evidence just yet, but just the stuff that you want. What do you want to get through this course such that you will be delighted, you'll be grateful, you'll be glad, you'll be excited you spent the time and the money. Let's go ahead and pause the video now and write out at least 3 clear things that you want, stated in the positive, measurable, achievable, responsible, and set in time, a specific month, day, and year.